Hey, what's up everyone? It's Josh Tongol here, and I'm excited about today's guest. His name is Garnet Schulhauser. And Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who practiced corporate law for over 30 years. And in his current work, recounts how his life dramatically changed one day back in 2007 when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert, who was actually his spirit guide in disguise. And this encounter launched the beginning of a very provocative dialogue with Albert, who disclosed information to him about the true nature of the soul, reincarnation, the afterlife, and much, much more. And he shares his many astral adventures in his books, Dancing on a Stamp, Dancing Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and his latest book is Dance of Eternal Rapture. So Garnet, it's nice to have you on the show.
So nice to be here, Josh.
Cool. So, tell us a little bit about yourself since this is your first time on the show. What was your life like before that unexpected day in 2007?
Well, to go way back to my childhood, I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family. And so that was my background in terms of religion. And then by the time I got into my 30s, I started questioning a lot of the beliefs and dogma of the church. And I was searching for a new paradigm to latch onto, looking for answers to all the big questions in life, like who am I, why am I here, what's my life purpose, and what happens to me when I die. And so then in 2007, I was practicing law yet, and as you mentioned in the introduction, strolling down the street one day, and all of a sudden a homeless man just jumped out in front of me. He was looked like a very typical homeless man with sort of long stringy hair and scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But there was something very different about him because he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes, and his gaze seemed to be penetrating deep within me, like he was looking down into the depths of my soul, and I felt that he knew everything about me, which was strange because we'd never met before. But at the same time, his eyes were sending me this wave, this gush of what I would term pure unconditional love, which was just infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. So it's a very nice feeling, something I'd never experienced before. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights until he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And when I finally collected my wits about me, I went into the store to find him, couldn't see him anywhere. I walked back in the street, walked up and down for several blocks hoping to spot him, but he had disappeared into thin air. He was nowhere to be seen. So next day I came back, I had resolved that evening to come back the next day to find this guy. I came back to the same street, same time of day, hoping to spot him, and I walked up and down the same street for a few blocks, and I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And I said, initially I was sort of a bit skeptical because lawyers are skeptical, and I had a skeptical lawyer brain. So I said to him, "Well, why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because it looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." And he just gave me a big smile and he said, "Looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "If you want to, turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to all the questions you've been asking yourself all these years. See if you can find those answers on all the emails waiting for you on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me." So luckily, I decided to sit down and have a chat with him. And he told me his name was Albert, and he was one of my spirit guides in disguise. That was the beginning of a dialogue that went off and on for the next few months and eventually resulted in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp.
Wow. So, was Albert like a physical being you could see, or can other people see him too?
I could see him and I could touch him. He was very physical to me. And I found out later, he told me that I was the only one who could see him in physical form. So if other people had been walking down the street that day, they would have seen me sitting on a bench by myself, talking to myself because they couldn't see him.
Right. So you being a lawyer at the time, being like a rational person, I'm assuming like how do you know you weren't losing your mind and just seeing things?
Well, I had that doubt initially when I first started talking to him. Is like, the question, is this guy for real? But the more I talked to him, within sort of the first 5 minutes, he spoke with such clarity and wisdom and compassion that it just rang true in my heart. And I just knew, okay, this guy is for real, and I need to sit and talk to him and ask questions, and his answers just made so much sense to me. So my doubts evaporated very quickly, and then after that time, I just knew that I was talking to the real McCoy, and that he was really my spirit guide. I believed him totally.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so for the most part, I read several of your books already. I mean, your books are pretty much written like a dialogue between you and your spirit guide Albert. But to be honest, skeptics may be wondering, like, how in the world were you able to remember all those long conversations in such detail? Because some might assume it's all made up. You know what I'm saying? Like, was these conversations verbatim? Like, what would be your response to that if, like, people were wondering,
Well,
how did you remember?
Well, what I would do is during my first book, the dialogue, I would just sit in a quiet room, and I would just have after the first 3 visits, he no longer appeared as the homeless man, and he was just the voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy.
Okay.
And so I would sit all alone in my office and have a chat with him, ask him questions, and I had a notepad, and I would jot down the answers. And then when we finished the session or that part of the dialogue, I would go to the computer and key in the notes I had made. So to the best of my recollection, I tried to recall what he said exactly as he said it. I mean, obviously, sometimes there may have been a few words here and there that are slightly different
Sure.
nuances, but generally, it was as close as I could remember to what he told me. And so it wasn't too hard, really, because we wouldn't have, in the book, it seems like the conversation continuously flows, but it actually had a number of episodes. So there's plenty of time for me to sort of jot down my notes and get them in the computer, which then those notes formed the basis for my first book. But yeah, it wasn't too difficult. And it seemed I seemed to have more than usual clarity in terms of my memories of what he said to me, and I think that was probably by design on his part. But in any event, that's how the book evolved.
Okay. Cool. Cool. So you mentioned that he's your spirit guide, and so, like, there's a lot of people who grew up like you and myself. We grew up in the church and religious, and we believe growing up in, like, guardian angels and stuff. So I mean, what's the difference between a guardian angel and a spirit guide, if any?
Yeah, they're different. They're different types of entities. Spirit guides basically are pretty much like souls, like you and I. I mean, and for the most part, a lot of times they're part of our soul group. We tend to travel in groups, which I call soul group. Up through many different lifetimes, and where we exchange roles and take on different challenges, helping each other. So spirit guides are often part of our soul group. Oftentimes. You may have incarnated with your spirit guides in a number of other previous lives. So, and the spirit guides generally are people who have incarnated on the earth plane, so that they know what it's like to be a human on earth, and so that gives them a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom to help you on your journey. And basically, what spirit guides do is they're like your coaches from the spirit realm. They're there with you 24/7. They're there watching what you're doing. They know what you put in your life plan before you're born, and they're always sending you messages to try to guide you down the path that you had hoped to travel before you were born. But their messages, except for my conversations with Albert, which is really very unusual, most of the messages from spirit guides to people are very subtle, like flashes of intuition, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events. There's a number of ways they try to communicate, but it's all very subtle.
Right.
And
Right.
most people have a tough time trying to hear the messages, and then if they do hear them, try to figure out what exactly they're telling you, and then of course, oftentimes a human mind kicks in, and your ego says, "Well, no, you got that message, but I've got a better plan for you," kind of thing. So you have all these different reasons that the messages aren't followed, or even heard. Now, guardian angels are typically spirits who don't generally incarnate on Earth. So they're special spirits that are also there to help you, but guardian angels don't sort of try to guide you every step of the way. They're there to prevent you getting into some situation where you might have a death before your soul is ready to exit, and they will actually physically, if necessary, pull you out of a mess. You'll avoid a car accident, or some other mishap that might take your life before your soul is ready to exit. So they have a sort of a very specialized role. So both spirit guides and guardian angels are there to help you, but in slightly different ways.
Right. Right. So we'll get into some of the stuff that, Albert was disclosing to you, but just because you just mentioned about angels kind of like watching over people, protecting them, if we do have guardian angels who protect us, why do people still get hurt or die in car crashes if, did Albert reveal anything to you about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the reason is that if someone dies in a car crash, it's not because their guardian angel was asleep at the switch. It's because the soul of that person decided that that car crash was their exit point, that they would leave the earthly incarnation and go back to the spirit realm. So when the soul decides that that's the way it wants to exit, the guardian angel, of course, will not interfere. And so that leads to even go back a step. What surprised me, one of the things surprised me the most about what Albert told me is that no one dies by accident. It may seem like an accident, but everyone dies when their soul decides to exit. So that even if there's 300 people who die in a plane crash, it seems accidental, but all the souls of every one of those people decided that this group exit, this group death, was the way to exit the incarnation. And so souls decide when to leave. As humans, our human minds don't know what they're planning, but that's when we leave. And so and so guardian angels will try to save our lives where it's not a planned exit point, but if it is, they'll just let it happen.
Okay. So, before I just jump into all these like random questions about, life after death and, spirits, etc., like to understand, like, so you're getting a lot of these answers via Albert, like how? Just telepathy the whole time or talking physically in person?
No, for the first book, I met with him. He was physically present for the first three times. Then he was just a voice in my head, telepathy. So it was a dialogue. But I also on my other three books, the last three books deal with astral travels with Albert. In
Right.
which case, then he would show up in my bedroom in astral form, so not physical form, but in astral form, and he would take me in astral form off to the spirit side and other places. And so then I would talk to him by telepathy, talk to other people by telepathy, and also view other planets in the universe, other things that Albert wanted me to see. So there's sort of two main ways of that he showed his revelations to me.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So, just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, just kind of talking about like exit points. So are you saying that we as souls, we choose when we die?
Yes, yeah, and generally speaking, when before we're incarnated and we prepare a life plan, we usually build in 4 or 5 or 6 potential exit points for our incarnation, and then as we go through life, when the first exit point comes up, our soul can decide, okay, do I want to exit here or should I pass on this one and keep going? And so your soul has the absolute right in terms of which exit point they're picking. But yeah, ultimately it's your soul who decides when to leave the incarnation.
I could see some people saying, okay, that might make sense. But what about those who might think they might struggle with that answer? Because, they would wonder, like, what benefit would there be if you were to die tragically at a young age where you leave behind your children and then they have to struggle the rest of their lives without their parents? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good question. A lot of people ask that. When somebody dies tragically at a young age, like you say, leaving behind a young family,
Yeah.
people might say, "Well, why would you do that?" Well, it all depends on what was in the life plans of yourself and the people in your family. It may be that you came into this world to provide a lesson for the people that you left behind, a lesson that they had to overcome, that they planned for, and so your early exit was a planned thing, not so much for you to learn, but more for your family that you left behind to learn some hard lessons because you're gone. And so it seems like very strange to us, like, why would you do that? But there's a very good reason for it. We don't understand the reason here. Before you're born on the spirit realm, you totally understand why things are planned out the way they are.
Just as you were mentioning, like, we have these challenges. So, with life having its many challenges, why do souls still choose to incarnate? Why would they want to experience Earth with all the pain and the suffering that goes on?
Because it's just a way for the soul to grow and evolve by experiencing hands-on reality on the physical plane. A soul in the spirit realm, they can sort of learn about what happens on planet Earth or other places on the physical plane. It's sort of like book learning, but it's not really complete until you actually incarnate in the physical plane and get hands-on learning by really experiencing it firsthand. And the things that happen on the Earth plane, like Earth, don't happen on the spirit realm. There's no negative emotions. There's no pain, suffering, violence. There's none of that. Just pure unconditional love. So to really find out what it's like on the physical plane, most souls say, I need to jump in there with both feet, incarnate into a physical body, and then I'll really know firsthand what it's like to be a human on planet Earth.
Hmm. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you're also mentioning about how the differences between the earth plane and in the spirit realm. If we're originally from the spirit realm, like, why don't we remember anything from over there, or do we?
For the most part, we don't, and that's by design. So it's intended that we sort of pass through the veil of forgetfulness as we're incarnated, so that we don't remember where we came from, don't remember that we had a life plan or what's in it, and don't remember our previous lives. So that we basically come to Earth with more or less a clean blank slate, and then we have to sort of find our way, through our lives and to meet our challenges without the benefit of knowing what happened beforehand or what our plan was. So that's what makes life on Earth so difficult, is because we don't remember any of these things. Now, the odd person might remember a few things. Some memories of previous lives will leak through to the current life,
Right.
but it's not sort of the whole picture. And it's just intended on planet Earth that you don't remember these things, and which just makes it a more difficult challenge to be a human on Earth. And that's why Earth is one of the toughest schools in the universe. So it's all by design. And when you get back to the spirit realm, then we'll remember everything that you had previously remembered on the spirit realm, but you just don't remember it on Earth.
Okay, I mean, so speaking of design, a lot of people do think that God predetermines and pretty much lays out exactly what's going to happen in people's lives, like, just certain circumstances, even death, where you'll be born, who you're going to marry, etc. But you talk about this life plan. Can you tell us more about this whole life plan thing?
Yeah, before every soul incarnates, they prepare a life plan, which is basically a plan setting out the significant aspects of their upcoming life on Earth. And things like, okay, where am I going to be born? Who are my parents? First language I learn? First place I go to school. That's all. Those basics are all set out. When you're born, all that's already fixed in place. You set out other milestones that you want to achieve as well, challenges to face, lessons to learn. But it's not fixed in stone from the time you're born, because you have free will to make decisions, take actions. And because of that, because you don't remember what you put in your life plan, well, most of us stray off course many times during our life. And so it would be very unusual for someone to actually hit all the points on the life plan while they're on Earth, because it's so easy to wander off course. But anyway, the life plan is prepared with the goal of giving the soul the kinds of challenges to face, the lessons to be learned that will help that soul with its evolution. And that's the whole intent, for souls, how can I grow and evolve? Well, I'm going to go to Earth and face these challenges, and hopefully I'll pass them. In a lot of cases, you miss the challenge. You don't learn the lesson. You don't overcome the challenge. When you get back to the spirit realm, that's why so many souls say, okay, I didn't get it all this time. I'm going to go back again and do better the next time. And so that's why so many of us have numerous incarnations on Earth, because it's not easy to hit all the points that you want to hit in your very first time.
Okay, so this life plan was created by the individual and not necessarily like God, laying it all out for you.
Yeah, no, God does not. God, I call God the source. The source doesn't plan our lives, doesn't make us come to Earth. It's all the individual soul who does that based upon what they want to achieve. Now, they do get some advice. There's a group of very wise souls called the Council of Wise Ones there, who will help people with their life plans, help souls, give them good advice about whether their life plan is too easy or too ambitious. And so every soul gets that sort of good guidance. But the ultimate decision as to what's in your life plan is up to the soul. And in fact, the decision to come to Earth or not is totally up to the soul. No one makes the soul incarnate on Earth. You can stay on the spirit side as long as you want, or you can go and incarnate on a different planet. It's entirely up to the soul. But they get good advice from some very wise and advanced souls when they're preparing their life plan.
The soul pretty much is the one that creates this outline, that covers the major points in a person's life and kind of removes, I guess you could say, removes the victim mentality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people are in sort of in a bad experience and things are really getting them down, there's no way they should say, okay, why is God or the universe doing this to me? I didn't deserve this. The fact of the matter is, you chose this life, so you put yourself here, and so there's no one to blame. You're not a victim. You're the creator of your own destiny. You sort of write. You wrote your script, and you continue to write it, to rewrite it as you live through life. And so you're the one responsible for being here. And so, and you may not understand or remember why you chose these challenges or why you're having this tough spot in your life. but there was good reason for it, and you have to recognize that every experience, whether good or bad, is really a learning experience, and you have to figure out what it is that you should learn from it, and then move on.
So if we are the ones who create our life plans, why didn't some of us create our lives to be more privileged and comfortable, like being, filthy rich and never having any health problems, or just being trouble free altogether?
Well, and that's a good question. And I asked Albert that, and I said, if I could choose my own life, why didn't I choose to be Prince Charles? A very privileged. And he said, you don't understand it now, but there was you chose a life that to give you the challenges that you needed, and having an easy, cushy life, being very wealthy, probably wouldn't give you the challenges that you needed to face. And so you could go ahead and have that life, but then you come back and it's like, okay, what did I learn? Not much. And so everyone sort of says, okay, well, that was easy, but now I need to bear down and choose a life where I can actually learn something. And as many people say, you learn a lot more from your hardships and your failures than you do from your successes. And so that's why we chose our lives, and it'll all be apparent to us when we cross back to the spirit realm as to why we chose our particular lives. Right now, we don't know why. But a lot of people, have that same question: Why wasn't I born into in the family of a wealthy tech billionaire somewhere? Where life would be really easy. Wouldn't be easy, but you probably wouldn't learn very much.
If we do have this so-called life plan, I have a lot of people that I meet. They have a hard time figuring out what they want to do with their lives. I mean, if this life plan was already, created beforehand, like why do a lot of us have a hard time figuring it out though? Like after so many years.
It's just because of the fact that you forget what's in your life plan, and then you have to rely on the messages from your guides to sort of give you some clues, some insights as to where you should be going. And so, for a lot of people who don't, who are sort of wondering, well, what should I do? They have to become better listeners. They have to sort of focus on the messages they get from their guides, which isn't easy, but it's something we all need to do. And the one test is that. The goddess Athena told me on the spirit side. She said, if you're going through life and it feels like you're on balance and everything seems to be in harmony, and you're feeling good about it, then you're on the right path. But she says that if it feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall, then you need to back up and find another route. And so that's just a very rough sort of way of telling people whether they're on course or not. But having said that, if you figure out you're not on the right course, how do you figure out where to go? Well, you have to sort of watch, listen to the messages, watch for things like coincidental events, synchronicities, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And those kind of things can help sort of guide you on the right path. And it's not easy. I mean, the easiest thing would be for everyone's guide to speak to them like Albert speaks to me and say, okay, Josh, here's where you should go, and give you specific detailed instructions. They're not going to do that because it'd make it too easy for you.
What you're saying, though, would be considered heresy amongst like a lot of religious people. I'm sure you're aware of that, right? So, I mean, like, for example,
Absolutely.
Mainstream Christianity teaches that, you only got this one life, then that's it, boom, judgment. But you were mentioning about our lives, that we're on the spirit side, we plan, and we might have to like go back and kind of do better, which implies we have many lives. But why do you think modern day Christianity has such a hard time adopting this whole idea of reincarnation in many lives?
Well, because the doctrine against reincarnation, as I understand it in Christianity, was many, I think, about the 3rd century AD. Before that, there were some Christians who believed in reincarnation. Some didn't. In any event, the powers that be decided that reincarnation was not a doctrine, never happened. And in my view, as to the reason they did it was because they wanted to hold everyone's feet to the fire. Because if you said to people, you've got, you can have as many lives as you want, and so there'd be no real incentive to be particularly good in this life. You could just slack off and say, well, if I don't do it in this life, I'll try again in the next life. So the church wanted you to have one chance. This is the only life you get, and if you don't, if you don't do good and you break God's rules, you're going to be judged and sent to hell, an awful place. So they really wanted to keep the pressure on everyone that this was a life where you had to be good, and so it's just a matter of controlling people. But and their doctrine, of course, I was raised with this, is that God made a bunch of rules that we have to follow, and that if we broke those rules and didn't make amends, when we died, we'd be judged. God would judge us, and if He judged us to be bad people, then we would go off to this awful place called hell. So that was the main core of the religion. And as far as I know, I haven't been to church for a long time, but as far as I know, that's still there. And that's just a matter of making sure that everyone toes the line right now in this life, because there is no other chance. There's no second chance under their doctrine. Whereas if you have reincarnation as a concept, then it's like, well, if I don't do it in this life, I can come back again and again and again. And so there's no particular incentive to do it all in this life. So that's why the church decided no reincarnation.
Okay, I mean, just you did mention it earlier, so to play the devil's advocate, I'd like to have you share your response. Like, if reincarnation is true, wouldn't there be less urgency to do the right thing in a particular life? Because, like as you said, you could just be like, I'm gonna do whatever the hell that I want now, be hedonistic to the extreme, and just do better in the next life. So, I mean, what would you say to that, though?
Well, sure, there is less incentive if you believe in reincarnation, but there's a couple of aspects to reincarnation. Some of the Eastern religions believe that there is reincarnation, but you don't get to choose whether you come back at all or what you come back as. Like some of the Eastern religions, if you led a bad life, next life you're going to come back as a snake. And so that's an incentive for them to do good in this life. I mean, for the people who believe in reincarnation as I do, perhaps there's less incentive, but every soul has sort of like a moral obligation to try to do their best, to try to face all their challenges and learn and grow and evolve as quickly as possible. And so for most of us, it's sort of like, nah, you know what? Even a cushy life on planet Earth is not an especially a great existence. I mean, even the wealthy people have their problems.
Sure.
And so to just come back and have cushy lives because you can doesn't mean a lot of souls are going to do that. Like for most, it's sort of like, no, I want to graduate from planet Earth as quickly as I can, and I'm going to do that by having tougher lives, and I'm not going to slack off. I'm going to try to do my best.
So, I mean, but let's just say there are people who just choose not to do their best and they just want to screw around and hurt people, for their own selfish reasons. So you're saying that there's no judgment after death?
No judgment. There's no judgment by anyone other than each soul judges his own performance in the previous life. So when you cross over to the spirit realm, you have what's called a life review, where you can review the life you've just lived in sort of great detail all the way through. And during that life review, of course, you look at all the places that you took a wrong turn, made a mistake, hurt other people. When you're on the spirit side, where there's nothing but unconditional love, even if you were a bad person who deliberately hurt other people, when you're back on the spirit realm, you look at it and say, "Oh God, I wished I hadn't done that, and next time I'm going to try to do better." Because over there, there is no one who says, "I'm going to, just deliberately hurt people." It never happens. There's nothing but love over there. And so when you look back at a life on planet Earth, the people who deliberately hurt other people, they're going to feel badly about it, and they're going to vow to come back and try to do it again and have a better life.
Right. And so those people who see, their life in review, it gives you an opportunity to learn where you could have done better, so to speak. And at the same time, you could also feel the impact that you made in people's lives, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the life review is not designed to make you feel badly. It's designed to help you. It's a learning tool to see where you go over your life. You can see where you've took a wrong turn, where you hurt other people, where you shouldn't have. Yeah. And one of the great things about the life review is that when you're reviewing it, you not only get to see sort of what happened, but you get to feel hear the thoughts and feel the emotions of the people that you interacted with, so that if you said something really mean to a coworker one day in the life review, you get to feel their angst, yeah, and their hurt at your words. And even though at the time you may not have realized how you hurt them, when you do the life review, you'd be like, I should have been paid more attention. I should be more careful with my words. But you also get the good side too, because if you did some good deed to a senior on your block one day, you get to feel their great gratitude and love that they are sending your way as they're thankful for what you've done. So you get to feel the good and the bad. You learn more from the bad, of course, and then you realize that everyone should be more careful about what they say and what they do, because you should think about how that interacts with the people that are on the other end of it.
And so when you're referring to the spirit side, earlier you were mentioning like there's no violence, it's just like love and all that. Just for clarity, are you referring, when you say the spirit side, are you referring to like a highly evolved dimension that many people would call heaven or Summerland? Because from my understanding and from other, people, other resources that that I'm familiar with their work, they would say that the other side also has lower levels, apart from Earth, where there are consequences to what we do based upon the law of cause and effect. I mean, I even had like Suzanne Wilson on the show recently who talks about that there are such thing as lower levels, and even Jürgen Ziva, who's an astral traveler, talking about, that people do carry over some of their problems, that not everything in these other dimensions is all light and love. So that's where I kind of wanted to have clarity, is like, when you say spirit side, are you referring to everything? Like, that's just like not Earth, or is it just like a particular highly evolved dimension? Because, there's the works of like even Silver Birch where there's this law of cause and effect. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the spirit side is sort of the highest dimension possible. It's a totally non-physical environment. I mean, it roughly equates to what Christians might have said as heaven.
Okay.
But there is no. I've only seen one sort of level, so to speak, of the spirit side. I don't see many levels, and there is no cause and effect. It's like sort of whatever you did on the earth plane or the other physical planes, it's all left behind, other than the wisdom you got from what you experienced. And so there's no carryover. It's sort of like if you were a bad guy, there's nothing that you have to make amends to on the spirit side. It's all left behind. So that's my experience of the spirit side. There's no different levels, and there's no cause and effect left over. And because people on the spirit side, they just view, no matter. I mean, to give you an example, I had a conversation on the spirit side with Adolf Hitler and Jesus Christ sitting together. And Adolf Hitler goes to the same place as Jesus Christ did after they died, which is, there's only one place, that's the spirit side. And Adolf Hitler told me that after he passed from the earth plane, he met with a number of the victims of his death camps, and there was no animosity, no carryover, no revenge thinking, none of that. It was just unconditional love. That's all there is there. And so so none of that stuff carried over, which a lot of people will find strange. Like, how can the bad guys go to a good place? Albert says there's only one place to go. So from my experience, there aren't different levels, and there are some levels where you have to sort of pay for what you did.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty different from, the other sources that are out there, though, that are saying different things. Because I mean, I even had someone a couple episodes ago who says something a little bit different with the experience with Hitler. So, I mean, we don't have to get into that, but I'm just like, all right, I'd like to hear your experience. I mean, do you consider everything that Albert says to be infallible?
Absolutely. I have no question at all in my mind.
Just to kind of move on, because I know that's like it was a big topic that we had in another episode where we just talked about the problem of evil. In the afterlife, though, like, our thoughts are extremely powerful, right? And so we're able to attract certain environments. So what if someone has a strong belief in hell?
Well, if they have a strong belief in hell, I mean, initially, when for some people who have a strong belief in hell, when they cross over, they may in fact temporarily create a hell for themselves after they transition.
Okay.
But it's only very temporary until their guides come and say, okay, this doesn't really exist. You're just creating this for yourself, and they'll move them over to the fully transition to the spirit side. So occasionally, some people experience that very temporarily if they have a very strong belief about the fact that they're going to go to hell. So when they die initially, they put themselves there only for a short period of time. It doesn't really exist, and then they move on to the spirit side. So that does happen occasionally. If people, people have a strong belief about, some religious figure,
Sure.
initially they will meet them when they first cross over. So our initial experiences can vary a bit depending on how strong our convictions are on Earth, but it doesn't ever last forever. I mean, speaking of forever, I mean, time is sort of a much different concept on the spirit side. There's no linear time. There's no past or future. It's only the present. So when we talk about 200 years on Earth time, it's like nothing, a blink of an eye on the spirit side. So time is very much of a different kind of concept over there.
I mean, just to go back to like this whole idea of someone believing in hell, though. So with hell, there's also a devil or a Satan. Where does Satan fit into all this? Is there a Satan?
Satan doesn't exist. Yeah, Satan does not exist. Devil doesn't exist. That's just an invention of the various religions, the Christian, and I think other religions have it. And that's just a tool to instill fear into people. It's like, there's this evil person called the devil that runs hell, and if you're not good, you're going to go there and have to deal with this evil entity. And that's just a fiction they created just to control people through fear. It doesn't exist. There are no evil entities, no evil spirits as such. Because everyone, once they pass from the earth plane, they go over there and they're dealing with unconditional love.
Or people who, if they crossed over, would they be able to create these entities, even though they'd be temporarily just because of their indoctrination, but then eventually they'll wake up to
Yeah,
reality.
if somebody was really convinced that when
Yeah,
they died they were going to meet the devil, then they would temporarily meet a creature that they created that looks like the devil until their spirit guides just told them, okay, you're just creating an illusion here. It doesn't really exist. Come on over to the spirit side proper. And so, yeah, that is possible.
and so as we were talking about earlier about like just having these previous lives. I mean, why don't many of us remember those our previous lives?
Because it would be too much of a burden on us. Imagine if you're in this life and you've had, say, 200 previous lives, and if you could remember all those lives, you'd remember all the times that you were
It's
beaten,
a lot.
abused, or murdered,
Sure.
and that would be a real burden for you to carry around. Plus, all the times that you abused other people in those lives, which is very likely, you would have a lot of guilt that you're carrying around. So there, 200 lives of memories, good and bad, would be too much of a burden for you. You wouldn't be able to sort of fully live this life because you'd be spending too much time thinking about what you did over those 200 lives. So that's why you don't remember them.
That'd be very overwhelming. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
It's
would.
totally overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be hard to also, as you mentioned in the book too, like kind of learn, right? I mean, if you were given all the answers, right?
Yeah.
That analogy, So yeah, that was a good point that I read in your book. So I mean, let's talk about something that's very like popular these days. A lot of people talk about like the law of attraction and stuff. So what does Albert say about that?
Well, I mean, he says the law of attraction has to deal with thoughts. He says thoughts are beams of energy that fan out and affect other energy and mass in the universe. So thoughts have power, and focused thoughts have even more power than like regular thoughts. And so, for example, how did Jesus create his miracles, walking on water and turning water into wine? He had learned to focus his thoughts into very powerful beams of energy, which most of us can't do, but certainly he could do it. And so the law of attraction, Albert says, law of attraction can work if you sort of send out your thoughts that your desire to manifest something. It can work, but it doesn't work all the time, because if your thoughts as a human that you want to have something conflicts with what your soul thinks that you should have based upon your life plan and what it wants to experience, then your soul will basically send out a canceling thought, like, no, universe, we don't want this guy to have that because it's going to send him too far off his path. So when you have your thought and your soul doing a canceling thought, then oftentimes the law of attraction just doesn't work in that circumstance. So it can work, but it doesn't work all the time. Yeah, the other aspect is that if two people are both wanting the same thing and there's only one of them, then obviously they both aren't going to have it. And so the law of attraction may work for one, but it won't work for the other one. So there's a lot of reasons that it doesn't work. But he said having positive thoughts, positive affirmations about what you desire is always a good thing, even though it doesn't always turn out.
So it's true to a certain degree, like, but in a sense, there's like exceptions. So if somebody would make more money or whatever, they're trying to attract it and do everything, following the secret and all that. But then the conflict could be is that in their soul plan, there might be a possibility that they weren't meant to be like a millionaire. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
And if your soul knows that what you're trying to attract to yourself, because you don't remember what your life plan, if you're trying to attract something to yourself that wouldn't be appropriate for your life plan or would send you way off course, your soul will be working in behind the scenes to make sure it doesn't happen. And of course, you don't know what your soul has planned. And so that's why in a lot of cases, all the people say, I wished I was a billionaire. Doesn't happen for everyone. Very good reasons for it.
Right. So I mean, we've covered a lot of things so far, but what have the reactions been from your friends and family? Of you once being a lawyer to you now teaching spirituality, what some people would consider this like new age woo-woo stuff. So what have the reactions been?
Yeah, my family has been very good. My wife is very spiritual, so she kind of signed on to it right away when she found out what was happening to me. And my two sons, they go along with it. I mean, we don't really talk about it much, but I think they more or less, sign on to what I'm doing and say it's okay. I have three sisters who are still practicing Catholics, and they don't really say much either. We don't really talk about it when we get together. So they have their view and I have my view, and that's fine, but there's no animosity and we still get along fine.
But they read your books?
I think some of them have. I'm not sure if they've read them all.
It'll be awkward.
And I don't ask the question.
Sure.
I don't ask the question,
Oh, okay. So, why do you think all this stuff happened to you, even though you didn't necessarily ask for? I mean, like with your spirit guide appearing to you in the flesh and then having these amazing astral experiences that you documented in your other books. I mean, why do you think this happened to you? Because I'm sure a lot of people hearing this would be like, dude, I want to experience those things. And you know what I'm saying? So like, why you?
Well, I did ask Albert that question. He said that it was all planned before I incarnated. So this was part of my life plan, that he would show up as the homeless man and give me this guidance and make his revelations. And when I said, yeah, why me? There's lots of other people that you could have picked Stephen King or J.T. Rowling or something
Sure.
to get your word out. He said, well, no, there was a good reason, and they wanted to pick. He's got a number of messengers. I'm not the only one. And in my case, he said, because I'd had a few previous lives on Earth where I had some writing experience, they thought that, so for number one, I might be able to actually write in a cogent manner what he was telling me. So that was one of the reasons, and maybe that's the only reason, I don't know. But we definitely planned it beforehand, except I don't remember it, but of course he does.
Maybe not everyone's spirit guide will appear to them in the flesh, but obviously from the data that we've gathered is like people do have spirit guides. So I mean, do you have any tips on how people can actually get to know their spirit guides, even though their guide may not necessarily appear in the flesh, or learn how to astral travel? Do you have any guidance or tips for any people?
Yeah, the best way to connect with your spirit guides and hear their messages is through meditation. With meditation, and there's a number of different ways of doing it. It doesn't matter which one you pick, as long as it works for you. Is you sit quietly, try to quiet your mind, try to get rid of all the other thoughts that clutter your mind every day, and to the extent you could do that, then the messages from your guides will come through clearer, and you'll be in a better position to understand them. And the more you understand them and listen to them, the more clarity they will come with. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of once you sort of start, the messages will come in a more often and in a more clear fashion. And so that's really the only way. There's no magic wand that you can wave to say, okay, my spirit guides come and talk to me, like in direct sort of telepathic contact. That's generally not going to happen to most people. I'm an unusual case, but listening to your guides and hearing their messages is not easy. But if you're aware of the fact that they are sending you messages, and you try to hear better through meditation, you'll hear more of them, and it'll become clearer to you. And when you get a flash of intuition, when you realize that that's really coming from your guides, and it's not some brilliant idea that just popped into your mind, it's coming from your guides. Once you start recognizing that, then you'll be more aware of these things and be more attuned to sort of carrying them out, because you know where they're coming from.
Yeah. So I think it's all about perspective, because I think a lot of people, they don't consider that's, the intuition, or, a little flash, like a random thought popping in their mind as like, oh, that must be my guide. I mean, they just think, oh, it's just my thought.
Exactly.
And I think that's where you point out, it's like, it's the subtle things that we got to pay attention to and be like, no, that's different. There's a different texture to it of your guide possibly communicating through the subtle, the still small voice, so to speak, that maybe some people would just say that's the Holy Spirit or God or whatever. But what about like during sleep? Do we receive messages during sleep?
Yeah, we do. Your guides will send you messages sometimes in your dreams. And again, that's not necessarily easy to decipher, because we all have a bunch of dreams, and not every dream has a message. Some of them do. So you have to sort of pay attention to your dreams. But one of the things that's interesting is that every night when we sleep, our souls leave our bodies and travel in the astral realm, often going to the spirit side to consult with our guides about what's going on in our lives and what should happen. So we sort of get a nightly one-on-one coaching every night when we sleep. The trouble is, of course, when you come back in your body, wake up the next morning, you don't remember that, but your soul did get some guidance, and so you're sort of never left alone. You've always got a lot of guidance, and you're always trying to head in the best direction. And it's good to have all these coaches that are giving you this guidance, and it's more direct when you sleep at night, because you travel over there and have a huddle with them. It's like the football team at halftime huddling with their coach and getting some guidelines. And so that happens to us all the time. Unfortunately, we don't remember that. It would be nice if we did, but we don't get to remember that.
Sure. So I mean, with all these encounters that you've had with Albert, whether it's in the physical or through dreams or astral travel, I mean, what's like the main message that Albert's trying to communicate through you and your talks and your writing?
Well, the main thing is just to realize sort of who you are and how the cycle of reincarnation works. And so you have to recognize you are an eternal soul, so you go on forever. You're an individual aspect of the source. You're created by the source. You're intimately connected to the source and to each other, and that you came here on your own free will. You chose the major tenements of your life, and that's why you're here. You're here to learn lessons and face challenges, to grow and evolve, and that no matter what you do, no matter how many wrong turns you take, how many mistakes you make, you're always going to end up back on the spirit side, which is your true home. And from there, you can evaluate what you did in your life, and you can decide, okay, do I want to come back and try again on Earth, or incarnate somewhere else, or do I just want to stay in the spirit side? So it's really, there's a lot of freedom involved, and there's no absolute rules to follow on Earth. The source doesn't create rules, so there's no sort of absolute right or wrong in the eyes of the source, and there's no judgment. So you're free to go ahead and carry on with your life, and if you screw up, no worries, you can come back again and try to fix it up or go somewhere else. And so it's sort of the total freedom of choice for the soul to choose things that will help them grow and evolve. And it's very exciting because it's sort of like you're on a never-ending journey of spiritual evolvement. It has no finish line, which is good. And there's always things to see because the universe is constantly changing. If you graduate from planet Earth, you can go onto a different planet and incarnate in a different life form. So there's endless possibilities.
I mean, I guess we could kind of go back to even what you said earlier, because you were mentioning about because I know this is like a big topic, even with the spiritual community of, well, is there like objectivity to like goodness and evil? And, you'll find some people saying that there's no such thing as evil. And you'll find other people who talk about life after death, that there is such thing as, evil and consequences and stuff. So, I mean, you were talking about how there was a conversation even with Hitler and Jesus, and it's like what Hitler did here on this earth plane. It's like ultimately it seemed like it didn't really matter. So I mean, are you saying that there's no such thing as like an objective kind of evil?
There is no objective kind of evil. There is evil. Evil on earth is a relative thing. I mean, we all know sort of in our own minds what we call evil. Terrorist bombings, wars, murders, mass shootings. Most of us will call that evil. That's just a human thing. When you get on the spirit side, there's no absolute right or wrong or good or bad or evil or whatever. All that is just things that are happening on earth. And when you get back to the spirit side, none of that applies anymore. There's no sort of absolute evil, no objective evil. So what happened on earth just happened on earth. They view it much like people in a play. If you're on a play on earth and the script calls for you to stab and kill another actor, at the end of the play, when the curtain goes down, you don't get arrested by the police because it didn't really happen. It was play acting. So on the spirit side, they view what happens on earth is very similar. It's like we're all in a big play. And at the end of it, when the curtain goes down and you die and you cross back over, it's like, okay, that was a play. Let's see how I did in how I performed in that play. But nothing carries over in the sense of any evil carrying forward or any need for revenge. The person in the play on earth, the actor that you stabbed, of course, at the end of the play doesn't hate you and want revenge because they weren't really killed. It was just an act. So it's similar how people on the spirit side view things on earth, which for a lot of people may seem strange. But Shakespeare had it right. He said, "All the world's a stage." He knew exactly what was going on.
I know a lot of people would have a really hard time with that, though. I mean, because that's a pretty heavy thing to just think if this is just like some sort of script or play. I mean, doesn't that kind of give people the license to justify the things that we deem to be evil here on the earth? Like someone who was a Hitler, and will be like, all right, so Hitler killed millions of Jews, but that's just part of his script, and he was really doing what he just planned, but it's not really wrong. It's just part of his script. You know what I mean? I mean, doesn't it kind of develop that line of thinking where you could just justify? I'm not trying to be all heavy here, but it's just like I know people would logically conclude these things if they hear something like this, like if it's just a script like pedophilia and, people being sexually abused, and we'll just be like, well, that guy just followed his script, but deep down, that's not really wrong. He's just following a script.
Yeah, and the reason that we don't do that is because we get these sort of these feelings of moral right and wrong coming from our soul, because our soul does not want us to do evil things on earth unless it was at the request of somebody else and it was planned. See, there's two reasons that evil things happen on earth. One is that it may have been planned beforehand. So, for example, if I in a previous life, if I had been abusive towards my kids, when I finish that life, I may think, okay, well, I really need to feel what it's like to be on the receiving end. So I may go to you and say, Josh, I want you to incarnate as my father, and I want you to abuse me so that I can get to know what it's like, the feeling of being abused. So in some cases it's planned. In other cases it's not planned. What happens is that the person there didn't plan beforehand to be evil, but they let their negative emotions get out of control, and then the evil things just flowed from that. So there's two reasons for evil on earth, and you never know whether it was planned or whether it wasn't. But we all have sort of a moral code that's ingrained into our souls about not running amok and trying to harm people. I mean, if your country suddenly decided tomorrow that murder would no longer be a crime, you wouldn't necessarily rush out and kill all your neighbors, because you just know deep down inside that that's not the right thing to do. And most people would be like that. So that's why, the people who understand how it goes, I'm not going to go and be mean or evil to other people, knowing that back on the spirit side, it didn't really count, because I know it counts here, and I know that's wrong. And that kind of action would slow down my evolution. And, and as I said, all souls want to graduate from planet Earth. To the extent that you do those evil things, it just slows down your evolution. And, I don't want to keep on coming back here for another 1,000 incarnations, to be honest. And so that's why I don't do those things. And a lot of people sort of feel the same way. So it's not a license to sort of go out and do whatever you want, because it'll just slow down your evolution.
I mean, you saying that is kind of like it's relative here. A lot of people wouldn't go out and murder people, but some of them will. It's all relative. You know what I mean? So it's like, because what you're sharing is similar to what Robert Schwartz said when he was on my show. Where like, yeah, the evil happens in this world. Possibly number one, it's like what you were saying earlier, that it happens because it was probably part of your pre-birth planning. So the bad guy, being your dad, abusing you, he actually did it out of love. He's just playing the role. And then there are other ways where you could kind of stray away from your good plan because of your free will and do quote unquote evil. But doesn't that kind of make love lose its meaning then? It's like, because I mean, when I heard even Robert Schwartz when he was on my show, he was like, there was this conversation between a father and a daughter, father and a child, and saying, I need you to abuse me so I could understand such and such, and they need to have some sort of experience. So supposedly the father, out of love, was being cruel and mean to the child. But I'm like, if that's disguised as love, I mean, what is love then?
Well, I mean, love is love, and to say that, it's kind of a misconstruing to say that somebody on Earth abusing their child is doing it out of love. They're not doing it out of love. They have another reason. They may have agreed to the plan beforehand on the spirit side because they love the other soul, which is not unusual because all souls love every other soul, and so it's really part of sort of like, okay, you need this for your development, and you want to put this in your life plan. Okay, I'll cooperate. I'll be the guy who comes to Earth as your father, your mother, uncle, whatever it is, to do the abuse for you. And I'm doing it not because I'm going to enjoy doing that, like from this side, from this perspective. I'm going to do it just because you need someone to fill that role. And so that's what Souls and Souls Group do. They sort of help each other, set up their challenges and go through their lives, taking the challenges that they need to face. And they help each other that way. And so, who knows, one life I'm the abuser, next life I'm the abused. And that's how it goes. It seems strange to us as humans, but we're filling roles for other souls in order for them to fulfill their evolution and growth strategy.
Yeah, so I think this is something that people have to make up, their decision for themselves, because I know
exactly
a lot of people, the afterlife research and all that stuff, they have different opinions about that. But, anyways, like you just recently wrote a book, right? It just came out of maybe a month or two ago?
Came out in January, yeah. Dancing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, before we close, did you want to share just like what the gist of that is, to the audience?
Well, it describes another set of astral adventures I had with Albert, my spirit guide. And so he took me to a number of places. I met a number of very interesting and somewhat famous souls on the spirit side, like Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Archangel Michael. And I also got to go to some different planets. One planet with a very advanced human civilization where they had basically eradicated sort of all the negative emotions. So they had a very idyllic society. And so there's a number of things in that book. I can't describe it all in a minute.
Sure.
But I encourage everyone to read it. Go to my website and they can read a summary of it and download an excerpt.
Cool, cool. So I mean, so what's your website?
Website is garnetschulhauser.com. That's not easy to remember, but if they Google any of my book titles like Dancing on a Stamp or Dance of Eternal Rapture, you'll get to my website, and there's just loads of information about all of my books, and they can dial into all my social media sites. They can listen to all the recordings of all my previous radio shows. And this one is like number 144 for me.
Yeah, you've done a lot. Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, no, so don't worry. I'll have your links in the show notes, to your website and even to your book. So, so be sure to check out Garnet's book, Dancing on a Stamp, is his first one, but don't forget his other books as well, especially the recent one that just came out in January. You can find it on Amazon.com. And if you like listening to audiobooks, by using the affiliate link that I'll be providing, I'll be getting a small percentage in support of the show. You could download his book absolutely free with a free 30-day trial. Just go to audibletrial.com/flipside. And if you really appreciate this show and want to help keep it going, it costs money to keep it running. You can support me by going to patreon.com/Joshua Tongol. And I'd really appreciate the help, you guys. And, don't forget to write a review on iTunes. It'll help more people discover the show. And plus, it also encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing. And of course, please share this interview with your friends. I'm sure it'll encourage them and start up some conversations to get you guys thinking about some of these things. And so, Garnet, thanks for being on the show. And I really appreciate that you followed this new path of yours and for helping so many people along the way.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Josh. I certainly enjoyed the interview, and good luck with the future of your radio show.
Thank you. So, alrighty, guys, once again, thanks for listening. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. I'm out. Peace.